Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt drained, invisible, or trapped in a cycle that wasn't yours to carry? Have you given your energy, your voice, your heart to someone who thrived on your reaction, only to realize it never changed anything? Tonight, I want to take you on a journey into the silence that can set you free, the silence that confuses them, shatters their control, and rebuilds your life from the inside out. By the end of this talk, you'll see how walking away without explanation is not weakness. It is the most powerful act of reclaiming yourself. If this inspired you, hit like, subscribe, and join us on the journey to reclaiming your power. It will change your life. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people are taught that if you stop speaking, stop explaining, or stop defending yourself, you are giving up. But in reality, silence is not weakness at all. It is strength refined. It is what happens when you finally recognize that your energy is valuable and your peace is non-negotiable. Choosing silence means you are no longer willing to pour yourself into conversations that drain you, justify yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, or fight for a connection that costs you your sense of self. Silence is power because it comes from clarity, not fear. It is the moment you realize that explaining yourself has never changed the outcome, only exhausted you. You understand that your worth does not increase with every argument you win or every point you prove. Instead of reacting, you respond by stepping back. And that restraint requires immense emotional strength. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, but it takes self-control to walk away with dignity. When you choose silence, you are reclaiming control over your time, emotions, and mental space. You stop handing someone the ability to provoke you, confuse you, or pull you back into cycles that harm you. Silence removes the fuel. Without your reactions, manipulation loses its grip. You are no longer predictable, no longer accessible, and no longer available for emotional exploitation. Most importantly, silence is an act of self-respect. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to convince you. It reflects growth, the understanding that not every battle deserves your voice and not every person deserves your explanation. Walking away without closure from the outside world is not failure. It is choosing inner peace over external validation. And that choice is one of the strongest decisions a person can make. And once you understand that silence is power, something else becomes painfully clear: why it works. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop feeding the very thing that kept the cycle alive. A narcissist does not thrive on connection the way healthy people do. They thrive on response. Any response. Love, anger, tears, explanations, even disappointment. It all registers as attention. It all confirms that they still matter, that they still have access, that they can still reach inside you and move something. For a long time, you may have believed that if you just said the right words, stayed calm enough, or explained yourself clearly enough, things would change. But every reaction, no matter how justified, became fuel. Your pain fed their importance. Your emotions reinforced their control. You weren't weak for reacting, you were human. But they learned your emotional language and used it as leverage. That's why silence shifts everything. When you stop responding, you don't just remove yourself from the conversation, you remove the supply. There's nothing for them to feed on anymore, no emotional energy to absorb, no reaction to twist, no words to manipulate. The stage goes dark, and suddenly they're performing to an empty room. This is where your power becomes undeniable. You are no longer dancing to cues they set, you are no longer available for emotional extraction, and that absence is destabilizing for someone who survives on validation. Without your reactions, they are forced to confront the emptiness they spent so long avoiding. Your silence doesn't punish them, it protects you. It isn't a tactic, it's a boundary. It's the quiet declaration that your emotions are sacred, not consumable. And when you finally stop feeding the cycle, you don't just starve manipulation, you nourish your own healing. Because every moment you choose not to react is a moment you choose yourself. And in that quiet space where you no longer react, something unexpected begins to happen. The silence you thought would go unnoticed becomes the loudest statement you've ever made. Because when there are no messages, no explanations, no emotional echoes coming back, your absence starts to speak for you. It says everything you tried to explain but were never heard. It says, I'm done chasing understanding. I'm done proving my worth. Your absence changes the dynamic completely. When you were present, responding, engaging, trying, you were predictable. They knew which buttons to press, how long it would take before you replied, what emotions they could trigger. But now there is nothing to read, nothing to decode, nothing to control. The quiet becomes unsettling. It forces them to confront a reality they avoided for a long time. You are no longer available. And that realization lands hard, because your silence removes the illusion of power they once believed they had. They can no longer measure their influence through your reactions. There is no confirmation that they still matter in your emotional world. Your absence becomes a mirror reflecting their loss of control back at them without a single word spoken. What's remarkable is that your silence communicates strength without aggression. You didn't insult them. You didn't threaten them. You didn't even explain yourself. Yet the message is unmistakable. It says, I chose myself. And that choice carries a weight no argument ever could. Meanwhile, on your side of the silence, something shifts too. Each day you don't respond, you reinforce your own clarity. You feel less pulled, less confused, less entangled. The space they once occupied begins to fill with peace, with self-trust, with a growing sense of freedom. And as you move forward, your absence becomes final, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. In the end, silence doesn't just end the conversation, it ends the illusion. And what remains is truth, spoken not through words, but through the undeniable power of walking away. And when that truth settles in, when your absence no longer feels temporary but permanent, confusion takes hold on their side of the silence. Not reflection, not growth, but disorientation. Because narcissists rely on patterns. They survive on predictability. They expect you to return, to break, to question your own resolve. When that doesn't happen, their internal structure starts to shake. They replay conversations, searching for a misstep. They tell themselves you'll reach out tomorrow, then the next day, then the next. Your silence disrupts the story they've always told themselves, the one where they are untouchable, always in control, always desired. And without warning, that narrative collapses. Confusion is the first crack in the armor. They don't understand what changed because nothing changed on the surface. There was no dramatic exit, no final argument, no clear ending they could manipulate or rewrite. You simply vanished from the emotional stage. And that uncertainty is deeply unsettling. It leaves them grasping for certainty in a place where none exists. This confusion isn't about missing you as a person, it's about losing their position. They are no longer sure where they stand. They can't read you, they can't provoke you, they can't confirm their importance through your reactions. And for someone whose sense of self is built on external validation, that loss feels like a free fall. So they hesitate, they watch, they test the silence with small, calculated moves, a message, a reminder, a sudden appearance, not because they understand, but because they're trying to regain footing. Confusion makes them restless, anxious, and exposed. Meanwhile, you continue moving forward, steady and grounded. What feels like confusion to them feels like clarity to you. Because while they are trying to make sense of your silence, you have already made peace with it. And in that imbalance, the power has fully shifted, not through confrontation, but through quiet, unwavering resolve. And when confusion can no longer be tolerated, it hardens into urgency. The silence stretches on, and suddenly doing nothing feels more dangerous to them than doing anything. This is where desperation disguises itself as affection. Messages become warmer, memories resurface, apologies appear softer, more emotional, more convincing. They reach back not with understanding, but with hunger. This is the Hoover phase, the pull to draw you back into orbit. It may sound sincere, it may feel familiar. They might say the words you once begged to hear, but this moment isn't born from love. It's born from loss. Loss of access, loss of certainty, loss of the role you played in stabilizing their ego. Real love respects distance. Desperation violates it. What they're trying to recover isn't the connection, it's the control. Your silence disrupted their sense of dominance, and now they are reaching for whatever version of themselves will work. The caring one, the remorseful one, the wounded one. Each attempt is a hook, carefully shaped to catch your empathy, your hope, your lingering attachment. And this is the most dangerous point in the cycle because it targets your heart. It whispers, maybe they've changed. Maybe this time is different. But change does not arrive in panic. Growth does not emerge from fear of abandonment. And love does not only show up when it is about to be lost. You feel the pull because you are human, because you remember the good moments, because part of you still wants the story to end differently. But your silence has already taught you something important. Consistency matters more than words. And urgency is not the same as commitment, so you stay quiet, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. And that choice, not responding to desperation, draws a final line. Because when love is real, it doesn't need to chase control. And when healing is real, it doesn't turn back just because someone suddenly realized what they lost. When desperation fails, when the apologies don't land, when the memories don't soften you, when the silence remains unbroken, something darker begins to surface. The warmth drains from their words. The tenderness evaporates. What steps forward now is anger, not grief, not heartbreak, rage, because charm was never their true nature. It was a tool. And when that tool stops working, it's discarded without hesitation. The mask slips and the tone changes. Messages become sharp. Accusations replace apologies. You are suddenly blamed for everything they once claimed to regret. This shift isn't random, it's exposure. It reveals the truth that was always there, hidden beneath performance. Loss of control feels like humiliation to them, and humiliation to a narcissist is intolerable. So they attack. Not because you hurt them, but because you escape them. Your silence becomes an insult. Your independence becomes a threat. And anger becomes their last attempt to provoke a reaction, any reaction, that would restore their sense of power. They may try to bait you with cruelty, with guilt, with carefully chosen words meant to wound. They want to see if pain will do what a Fei, Qishan, could not. They want proof that they still matter enough to disturb your peace. And this is the moment where your silence speaks the loudest because you don't engage. You don't defend yourself against accusations that were never about truth. You don't correct the narrative. You don't step back into the chaos. And in doing so, you confirm something they cannot accept. They no longer have access to you. Anger thrives on response. It needs resistance to feel justified. Without it, it collapses inward. And while they spiral in frustration, you continue to rise in clarity. The rage that once would have pulled you back now only pushes you further away. This is not coldness, it's self-preservation. And in refusing to engage with their anger, you protect the healing you fought so hard to build, proving that peace is not passive, but power held with discipline and resolve. And when anger no longer reaches you, when even cruelty echoes back into silence, they look for a different way to regain control. If they can't reach you directly, they'll try to reach the world around you. This is where the story changes shape, and you begin to hear your name spoken in rooms you're no longer in. The narrative shifts. You are no longer the one who walked away to protect your peace. You are recast as cold, unstable, ungrateful, impossible to love, not because it's true, but because it's necessary for them. Smear campaigns are not about destroying you. They are about rescuing their OWN fragile image. If they can convince others that you were the problem, they don't have to face the reality that you simply chose yourself. This is panic wearing a confident voice. They speak loudly because silence terrifies them. They rewrite history because the truth threatens them. And they recruit validation wherever they can find it, hoping someone, anyone, will reflect back the version of themselves they can tolerate. What they cannot say is the simplest truth of all. You left because you grew. And here's the quiet power in this moment. You don't correct the story. You don't rush to defend yourself. You don't chase every lie with an explanation. Because the people who truly know you don't need convincing. And the people who believe the lies were never meant to walk with you anyway. Smear campaigns burn fast and fade quietly. They require constant energy, constant drama, constant reaction. Your silence denies them all three. And over time, something becomes clear to those who are paying attention. Stories told with bitterness always reveal more about the storyteller than the subject. While they speak, you heal. While they point outward, you move forward. And in choosing dignity over defense, you step fully out of their reach, untouched, unbroken, and finally free. And when the noise they create no longer produces the reassurance they hoped for, something even more unsettling begins to happen. The audience thins. the validation weakens. The echoes don't come CK as loudly as before. And in that quiet aftermath, they are left alone with the one thing they have spent a lifetime avoiding themselves. Without your reactions, without your presence to absorb their emotions or stabilize their identity, the distractions fall away. There is no one to project onto, no one to blame in real time, no one to regulate their inner chaos. The silence you chose now surrounds them, and it forces an encounter they never prepared for: self-awareness. This is not a moment of growth, it is a moment of exposure. They catch glimpses of the emptiness beneath the performance, the insecurity beneath the confidence, the fragility beneath the control. And for someone who built their sense of worth on external validation, that reflection is unbearable. It's like standing in front of a mirror that doesn't flatter, doesn't adjust the lighting, doesn't lie. Some will run from that mirror immediately, seeking a new source, a new audience, a new distraction. Others will sit in discomfort, restless and agitated, unable to name what feels wrong. But either way, the truth remains. Your silence removed the buffer that protected them from themselves. Meanwhile, you are learning something profoundly different. Solitude no longer frightens you. Quiet doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like relief. Where their silence feels empty, yours feels full, full of clarity, full of self-trust, full of peace that doesn't depend on being seen or praised. And that contrast matters because it shows you that the power was never in winning arguments or being understood. The power was in stepping away and letting truth surface on its own. You didn't force insight. You didn't demand accountability. You simply stopped participating in the illusion. And when someone is left alone with who they truly are, there is no silence louder than that. And while they struggle with that reflection, while they search for new distractions to escape it, something remarkable is happening on your side of the silence. You are healing, quietly, steadily, without announcement. And that healing becomes the one thing they cannot reach, cannot imitate, and cannot take from you. You begin to notice the weight lifting. The constant self-doubt fades. The urge to explain yourself weakens. You start trusting your instincts again, listening to your own voice without needing permission. What once felt like survival slowly turns into growth. And that growth is devastating to anyone who needed you small, confused, and emotionally available. They may move on quickly, loudly, dramatically, but what they build is a substitute, not a solution. They repeat patterns because repetition is safer than change. You, on the other hand, are doing the harder work. You are breaking cycles. You are learning why you stayed, why you tolerated, why you doubted yourself. Not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. And here is the truth that shifts everything. Your healing is not loud, but it is final. It doesn't require validation. It doesn't need to be seen to be real. And that is why it is their greatest defeat. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you stopped needing them. You no longer orbit their moods. You no longer shrink to keep peace. You no longer question your reality just to maintain connection. And in reclaiming yourself, you become unreachable to the very dynamics that once trapped you. They may never understand what they lost, but you do. You gained clarity. You gained strength. You gained yourself. And while they chase reflections of control elsewhere, you are building a life rooted in truth, stability, and self-respect. Healing doesn't seek revenge. It seeks freedom. And the moment you choose that path, the cycle ends, not with conflict, but with quiet victory. And that quiet victory leads you to the final, most liberating truth of all. The moment you stopped explaining yourself was the moment you truly became free. For so long, you believed closure required conversation, that healing demanded answers, that peace would come once they finally understood your pain. But what you learned through silence is this: some people are not confused. They are committed to not understanding. And no amount of explaining can reach someone who listens only to respond, not to reflect. When you stopped explaining, you stepped out of a courtroom you were never meant to stand in. You were never on trial. You didn't need to defend your feelings, justify your boundaries, or convince anyone of your worth. You realize that clarity doesn't come from being believed by someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. It comes from honoring what you already know in your body, your heart, and your lived experience. This is where true closure lives, inside you, not in their apology, not in their accountability, not in their sudden insight, but in your decision to no longer hand your truth to someone who mishandled it. Silence became your final sentence, and it was complete. And in that completion, you stopped waiting for change, waiting for remorse, waiting for validation. You turned your energy inward, where it had always belonged. You began building a life that didn't require constant explanation, only alignment. This is the kind of freedom that doesn't announce itself, it doesn't seek approval, it simply exists, steady, grounded, unshakable. And once you experience it, you understand something profound. Walking away without saying a word wasn't giving up, it was choosing yourself. And that choice, quiet, firm, and unapologetic, is where the cycle truly ends. And once you understand that freedom doesn't come from their words or their acknowledgement, you realize something even more powerful. Your life is no longer dictated by their understanding. Closure, peace, and self-respect are not gifts they can give. They are choices you make. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, you step fully into that truth. You stop negotiating your value with someone who never intended to honor it, and you begin living on your own terms. This is the essence of true liberation. It's the quiet, unwavering realization that you don't need anyone's permission to exist fully. You no longer measure your worth by their reactions, their approval, or their attempts to draw you back into their chaos. You stop rehearsing responses, strategizing defenses, and holding space for their feelings at the cost of your own. Instead, you claim every piece of yourself that was once given away in the hope of acceptance. And in that claiming, something remarkable happens. Peace grows naturally. You wake up without the weight of anticipation or the tension of constant vigilance. Decisions become clearer because they're rooted in your values, not in the fear of their judgment. Joy returns in small, authentic ways because you are no longer rationing yourself to meet their expectations. And every step you take away from the cycle is a reminder that your life belongs to you, entirely and unapologetically. The narcissist cycle only ends for one reason. You stop feeding it, you stop reacting, you stop defending. And in that stillness, you reclaim what was always yours, your mind, your heart, and your peace. Silence, once seen as empty, becomes full of possibility. It is no longer a pause or a retreat. It is the foundation of your freedom. And so, the final truth is simple yet profound. The moment you choose yourself over explanation, you discover a life that cannot be shaken by anyone who refuses to see your worth. That is the ultimate victory. And now, as we come to the close of this journey together, I want you to feel the weight of what we've uncovered. Because this is not just a story about narcissists or cycles. It's a story about you, about your strength, your resilience, and the quiet, unstoppable power that lives within when you finally decide that you are enough every moment you stayed. Every word you offered, every tear you shed was not wasted. It taught you something invaluable, that your peace is priceless, your voice is sacred, and your life cannot be held hostage by someone else's inability to see your worth. Imagine for a moment the freedom in stepping off the emotional treadmill, where every explanation, every defense, every attempt to be understood is replaced with stillness, clarity, and self-respect. That freedom isn't theoretical, it's real, and it's waiting for you. The silence that once felt empty becomes a canvas on which you can paint your life exactly as you choose. No permission needed, no approval required. Your boundaries become your armor, and your choices become your compass. And here's the part that matters most. This power doesn't come from winning arguments or being believed. It comes from deciding that your value doesn't depend on anyone else's recognition. Every day, you choose yourself, you chip away at the cycle, you starve the manipulation, and you build a life anchored in clarity, dignity, and joy. So as you watch this, I want you to leave with this truth echoing in your heart. The moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop justifying, the moment you stop giving away your peace, that is the moment you take your power back. That is the moment your life begins on your terms. Hold on to that, because no one and nothing can ever take it away from you. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your freedom.